समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा?
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
A Diya was lit at the White House. Donald Trump dialed the phone to Prime Minister Modi on the occasion of Diwali, and it seemed for a moment that the warmth of the Diwali lights had created somewhat of a thaw in the frosty relations between India and America. But with Donald Trump, you always have to look twice and look over your shoulder, because the fantastical claims, this time albeit somewhat toned down, soon followed. Claims on India's purchase of Russian oil, and also claims that Trump had discussed with Prime Minister Modi how there should be no war with Pakistan. Prime Minister Modi also reciprocated the Diwali greetings on X and made no mention of any of this, simply speaking about the relationship between India and America, but also perhaps with a subtle message for Pakistan by invoking the fight against terrorism. I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo Story. It was Diwali at the White House, and that is the Diya being lit by Donald Trump as he called India a great country and Prime Minister Modi his great friend. The two leaders also spoke on the phone, this time an actual phone call. The last time the MEA had to say that they were not aware of the phone call that Trump was referencing. But Trump made two claims. His claim on Russian oil was repeated, that India has said it would not buy too much oil from Russia. This is distinctly different in tone from his earlier claim, which was that India would completely stop buying oil from Russia. Still, is that overreading? Has India made an assurance of this kind? The Foreign Ministry has only officially said that consumer interests would dictate its policy. The numbers, of course, tell their own tale. There is a 10% drop, 8 to 10% drop in India's purchase of Russian oil, but Russia continues to be the single largest source of imported oil. Trump also repeated his claims on Pakistan and claimed or made a reference to how there should be no wars with Pakistan, is what he claims he told Modi. Modi didn't take any of this head on in his tweet. He only reciprocated the Diwali greetings, spoke about the need for a deep relationship between India and America, and also spoke about the fight against terrorism, which many see as a subtle messaging on Pakistan at a time when Trump seems to be somewhat courting Pakistan, leaning towards Pakistan, call it what you will. Now, could the two leaders even meet on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in the next few days, as early as that? Or will there be a lot more groundwork before any of that could happen? To look at the Diwali moment between Trump and Modi and what it means for our two nations, I want to introduce our panel of distinguished experts today. Professor Harsh Pant is with us. He's, of course, one of India's finest strategic affairs minds with the Observer Research Foundation. Welcome to the program. Dr. Tara Karta is with us, another very well-respected strategic affairs policy analyst. Welcome, ma'am. Always a pleasure. And veteran diplomat Ambassador Yash Sinha is with us as well. Welcome, everybody. A happy Diwali to all of you and to our audience. I want to start by giving you a glimpse of the Diwali at the White House and what Trump said with his claim on India's purchase of Russian oil. This statement seemed a little tempered down from his last claim, which was very categorical, very absolutist, that India is going to stop purchasing Russian oil. There was a graded difference, but is that a substantive difference? We'll discuss that in a moment. Take a look.
Please, thank you.
We stand great, and the people of India, I love the people of India, and we're working on some great deals between our countries. I spoke to Prime Minister Modi today, as I mentioned before, and we just have a very good relationship. And he's not going to buy much oil from Russia. He wants to see that war end as much as I do. He wants to see the war end with Russia, Ukraine. And as you know, they're not going to be buying too much oil. So they've cut it way back, and they're continuing to cut it way back.
Let's start there. I'll come to what he said about India, Pakistan later. Ambassador Sinha, do you see any noticeable difference between this comment, not buying too much oil, and previous claims of not buying any oils? We have the numbers. The numbers suggest an 8 to 10% drop in the last some months, but nothing significant. How do you read Trump's latest claim on Russian oil, and how do you look at these statements that have come out of Washington, the Diwali phone call, Prime Minister Modi's response? How do you look at all of it?
Barkha, thank you for having me on your show. I think we shouldn't lay too much store by what is being said from the White House in terms of buying Russian oil, because you see contradictory statements emerging in the recent past. But I think what is important for us is for us to decide how much oil do we need to buy from country X or Y. And while, of course, we've said that they would be dictated by our economic considerations and our energy security, obviously geoeconomics plays a role. And I think the fact that we are diversifying, one, I think as far as the pricing of oil goes, we are perhaps gaining about $5 billion odd in 6 months buying Russian oil. But then we have to weigh that against what we are losing in terms of the 50% tariffs that have been imposed upon us. Now, that is a different debate. But what I'm trying to say is that there is recognition that it's not like a tap that can be switched on and switched off at will. India will take the necessary decisions, and it will take it in its national interests. So I think there is recognition, or I would say growing recognition, that India can't be bullied into completely stopping buying oil from a country just because some other country wishes so. So I think that realization is becoming apparent in statements that are coming out. And perhaps, I don't know, because we don't know what happened behind closed doors. When Ambassador Sergio Gore was here, was this discussed? What was discussed? We don't know. But the fact of the matter is, I'm optimistic that the trade deal will be signed soon. And I cannot say when. I think obviously what was holding it back was ostensibly Russian oil, but something more than that. But these telephone calls between two principals are always a good thing. And I think they help clarify matters. Both sides understand each other's positions better. So I'm sanguine that perhaps we are finally at the end of the road as far as the trade deal goes. After that, what the contents of the trade deal are going to be, whether we're going to be making commitments regarding.
Okay, I think we lost the connection to Ambassador Sinha there, but the operative point that he wanted to make is the big headline, and that is that he believes that the trade deal, the Indo-US trade deal, will be signed soon. We don't have the details. We don't know what has actually been hammered out between the two countries. Let me bring in Dr. Karta and Professor Pant. Professor Pant, I'll start with you. Do you agree? Because so much investment has been made in terms of asserting strategic autonomy, in terms of asserting a certain sort of sovereignty in decision making. And it is not clear now what India has said. The official statement that we have from the MEA only said consumer interests will be something that will take priority. We try to go through the data. The data shows an 8 to 10% drop in Russian oil, but Russia continues to be, as I said, the most significant supplier of imported oil to India at this moment. Do you believe that a tapering down of this to maybe levels that existed before the Ukraine war, which were negligible, is what India may have promised? And if so, is that something that the government would need to explain to people after having taken the very firm position that it had initially, or will it be sort of absorbed in the detail of trade negotiations? Professor Pant.
Hi, Barkha. Thanks for having me. I just, I think it seems that it would be very difficult to go back to the the days of pre-Ukraine levels, because certainly the political economy of India dictates a certain kind of energy security. And energy security does not, you really cannot do it overnight. You have to prepare for it, you have to plan for it, and certain lines which have been protected and preserved over the last few years will continue for a while. So that means that the Russian oil will be with us for a while. Even if we plan today, or we had planned as early this year, that we would want to reduce it, because that's something that would go well with the larger trade negotiations that are continuing. But so I think that there is absolutely no sign that I see that we are going to make Russia irrelevant in our energy security. That's neither prudent nor, I think, would be necessary. I think, given that Mr. Trump himself continues to, go up and down with Russia, given that tomorrow he may strike himself a deal with the Russians, to expect India to cut off its most important energy supplier just because he wants it would be unrealistic. But I think the fact that you have two top leaders continuously engaged with each other, and despite all the rhetoric, despite whatever Mr. Trump says, you see a certain common sense now coming into that conversation, which I think is healthy. If you go back, as you were saying, if you do a discourse analysis, you would find that the discourse, which used to be very crude a few months back, has certainly now come to a level where it is acceptable to diplomats talking to each other, to top leaders talking to each other, is something that I think India can live with, and certainly Indian policymakers can defend. That even if there is a tapering down of oil from Russia, even if we are buying less oil from Russia, it has to do with the market pressures. It has to do with the facts that Russia is no longer offering us those discounts that it used to at one point in time. So I think clearly markets will dictate, but certainly geopolitics and geoeconomics, as Ambassador Sinha was saying, would be crucial as we go nearer to the trade deal and as the nitty-gritty of the trade deal also become operational.
So both of you are expressing some optimism, and I'm keen to understand from both of you. You said, Professor Pant, that we cannot go back to pre-Ukraine levels. So, has Trump accepted? Has he moved from they're going to stop buying oil to they're not going to buy much of it? Who defines much? What is the timeline? These are details we don't know. Dr. Tarakarta, do you believe the worst is over? I mean, Trump is such a volatile entity that, I think we would do well perhaps to caution our optimism. Dr. Karta. Ma'am, could you unmute yourself at your end before you respond, please?
Yeah. Can you? I would agree with you, Barkha. The worst is probably over for now regarding the trade deal. The trade deal is probably going ahead. I think in actual terms, coming to the Russian oil, many of your refineries are tuned towards Russian SAR, which is the Urals oil. So a switchover suddenly is not possible. It is not okay to expect industry to spend a hell of a lot of money changing the whole system towards a different type of crude, which is the US, the Texas crude. So that in itself is not possible. Number two, but however, I think the visit of Sergio Gore made a lot of difference, because there's nothing like sitting and talking to someone and telling someone this, and not so much him talking to the Indian Prime Minister as him going back and talking to the president. I think that would probably have been a critical factor. Is this over? Yes, probably the trade deal will go through with pain. We might be in agriculture. That is where you might find a degree of pressure coming in, which is going to take a lot of doing. But my point is, what is next? Next will be when you decide to buy, say, weapons from Russia, then what happens? That will be the next bridge that you'll have to cross. This is not over. As long as Trump is there, you're going to have a lot of problems with one thing or the other.
So you believe that this is it's like while Trump is in office, Dr. Karta, there are going to be lifelong kind of problems.
No, see, a lot of these problems were there earlier also. They never liked us doing A, B, C, D, X, but the only thing, you didn't say it out in public. You didn't threaten and yell and shout. It was all done in the sidelines in diplomacy. I'm sure the ambassador will agree with me that as US and India have had their differences, the trouble is he uses, everything is weaponized. Then it becomes a problem. So I know, I don't think this is over, because we're going to look at the next tranche of weaponry. And let's see where that comes from.
I want to just bring in Ambassador Yash Sinha on just one moment as we look at these shots of, Kash Patel. Sergio Gore was also there at the lighting of this Diwali lamp or diyas at the White House, along with, of course, India's envoy and other prominent Indian Americans. My question to you is this. How do you, if Dr. Pant is correct that you do not go back to, or we cannot go back to pre-Ukraine levels, then Trump is not the kind to offer that sort of logical argument. So what do you think India's, we don't know the details, but what are you guessing? Do you agree with Dr. Pant that India cannot go back to pre-Ukraine levels?
I think I broadly agree with Dr. Pant because pre-Ukraine levels were at really very, very low. And if we are still getting discounted oil from Russia, I think we will continue to buy from Russia if it is economical. However, I think if you look in terms of black and white, there will be shades of gray, and I think that what will happen is that we will reduce our intake from oil from Russia. We will buy more energy from the United States as part of the trade deal. And as far as agriculture is concerned, I think Dr. Karta mentioned the pain. There will be a little bit, but I think there is possibility. After all, we export agricultural products to the United States. We can't completely bar, imports of agricultural goods from the US. And this is the time. Buy, non-GM soya, the corn, for instance. We can afford to buy some of that to address the trade imbalance. That would help the US farmers also directly. Consider that China has reduced its imports of soybean from the United States drastically. So I think there is scope for give and take here. And that is what I think will form the basis of the deal that will be ultimately signed between the two countries.
But, I just want to remind everybody that in one of the rare public references to this tariff war, what Prime Minister said was the following, that dairy, agriculture, fishing, these were the sort of no-go areas. These were the red lines. Professor Pant, Dr. Karta, Ambassador Sinha, I want to pick up a comment from one of our audience members, Saurabh, who says, the problem is not that India is buying Russian oil, but that India is not buying American oil, corn, and soybean. Even if India diversifies its oil suppliers, the US will demand that India buy American oil. Do you agree with this read, Professor Pant, that it's all about buying, it's all about, adding to the American economy. It's all about giving Trump something that he can take to his voters. It's not about the principle. It's not about the principle of Russia and Ukraine, in other words.
No, there are no principles in the room anymore. I think the principles are talking to each other without any principle. And I think, certainly for Mr. Trump, the only thing that matters, whatever understanding we have had of him so far, is that ultimately everything is about his base, what he can take to his base and sell as a victory. Because he's not here to to create a legacy of a kind that maybe an Obama presidency or Biden presidency or any other American president would have endured. I think his apart from the Nobel Prize, he only wants his MAGA base to remain upbeat about him. And I think given the challenges that he is facing, given that the economy is not going to turn around very soon for the Americans, and you're not going to see a flood of employment opportunities opening for middle America anytime soon, what he has therefore done is he has looked at the other side. So how I'm going to project to the base what I'm denying to others. So you take H-1B visas from Indians and say, look, I'm not allowing them to come in. This is all yours. Now, it doesn't matter whether the base gets those jobs or not, but it matters that he is able to sell this, that look, I can't create, he's not going to say it, but I can't create jobs, but on the other end, I can squeeze opportunities for others to come in and work in America. So I think a lot of the time, certainly you have to look at it from his perspective. And as I think we were discussing, ultimately this will be a give and take where India will have to give something. Now, I think Tara is absolutely right that there is no guarantee at the end of it. That that once you've signed a trade deal, it will be over. Barkha, you remember when Mr. Modi had gone to the US in February, all of us were talking about how Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump have managed to outline a vision for the future, for the next 4 years, how the joint statement contained within itself elements of a relationship for the next 4 years. What happened immediately after Mr. Modi comes back, it starts unraveling, because that's the personality that Mr. Trump has. We saw it in the case of South Koreans. Poor South Korean president, he signs a deal, he gives investment, he's in the air and South Koreans are apprehended. By the time he lands in South Korea, he finds that politically he has been diminished. So I think the danger here is that whatever you do with Mr. Trump, you have to continue to protect your flank domestically. And I think Mr. Modi, therefore, will have to make sure that his domestic issues, as you were rightly pointing out, at the end of the day, the domestic political constituencies in this country do not come back and tell the government, look, you were saying you will stand up to him, and now look what has happened. You have given in on this, you have given in on that. And I think that constrains Mr. Modi's position, which is already very weak after Mr. Trump has come to office, given how he has challenged Mr. Modi domestically. And I think that's a real challenge for any policy.
I think that's a really important point, because even today, as we speak, the Congress is, as the opposition party, is gunning for the Modi government. They've issued a statement saying the Prime Minister conceals, Trump reveals. In other words, suggesting that we only get to know what's happening through Trump's claims. Obviously, the government has rubbished many of Trump's claims, fact-checked many of them. But on this claim of the Russian oil, we've been somewhat circumspect in our handling of it, and said that only consumer interests would prevail. But I agree with you 100% that the domestic narrative is going to be very critical for the Prime Minister as he navigates this, which is why if you see his comments are always they're very to the point. They're very sort of, narrowly expressed, and many would say that is how diplomacy should be conducted in public, but we live in the age of Trump. So, Dr. Karta, what concerns you the most when you say, okay, the worst may be over for now, but we don't know what's coming next? What concerns you the most about what may be coming next?
Gosh, that's a lot. Because, considering we are talking of Sindoor 2, we badly need a bunch of weapon systems, right? And of course, we have other places to look at them as well. My problem is, I would love to actually buy American, but that stuff is not coming. The G engines, for example, we've got one, of course, recently. There is actually a genuine problem which Trump is addressing. US ability to produce, it has actually gone down. Their what shall I say? Their industrial base has suffered. So you can't even depend on them for weapons because of that. And number two, because at any time he can pull the plug and say, you know what, I'm not giving you any. So working with Trump, even with the best of intentions, if I say, okay, I will buy everything American, even then you can't, because you don't know what he'll do next. But there is, on that question of whether this whole thing is just to do with buying American oil, let's, for the sake of argument, assume that he actually wants to end the war with Russia. And I think there is something to that. He does want this. You saw his meeting with Zelensky, President Zelensky, where he literally chucked all the papers out of the window. So there's a lot of pressure being built up. He hasn't given those, cruise missiles yet. And for us, it's good if the Ukraine war ends. For us, it's a good thing. So I don't know whether there is some way that we can get Russia to see reason and end this thing. I think there is a deal there on the table. So if that happens, the question is, then can you buy Russian oil or not? I don't know. That honestly, no idea.
That's a great point, because so far the allegation has been that the oil purchase is funding the Ukraine war. If the war actually ends, the purchase of Russian oil should be a non-issue. But equally, if the war ends, would Russia still be selling it at reduced rates? And we've been saying that we're buying it at reduced rates because that's better for us, right? So too many balls in the air. The one other thing we do need to talk about is Pakistan. We have identified Trump as having what many Indians believe a clear tilt, a somewhat strange fascination for Asim Munir. This at a time when, he's spoken about 155% tariffs on China, even amid speculation that he really wants to cut a deal with Xi Jinping. I just want to play out what he said. This is important, not just because he's talking about so-called ending the war between India and Pakistan, but he uses a sentence. I spoke to Modi about there being no wars with Pakistan. Modi doesn't engage with this. Modi's tweet simply talks about terrorism and the fight against terrorism. So there is messaging at play on both sides here. Let's listen to Donald Trump.
Americans, let me also extend our warmest wishes to the people of India. I just spoke to your Prime Minister today. We had a great conversation. We talk about trade. We talk about a lot of things, but mostly the world of trade. He's very interested in that. Although we did talk a little while ago about let's have no wars with Pakistan. And I think the fact that trade was involved, I was able to talk about that. And we have no war with Pakistan and India. That was a very, very good thing. But he's a great person.
So it's all jumbled, right, Ambassador Sinha? He's a great person. I love India. There is trade. Let's have no war. And then you have Prime Minister Modi's tweet, which is a short, to the point tweet. Can we have it up on our screen? So the two leaders continue to message in a very different way. They continue to conduct their diplomacy in a very different way. But this Pakistan sort of emphasis, not just in terms of the India-Pakistan Op Sindoor and the conflict between India and Pakistan, but the fact that when he was signing the Gaza Pact, he called Asim Munir his favorite field marshal. He gave the podium to Shehbaz Sharif while not giving it to Keir Starmer. And the UK is one of America's closest allies. I mean, not to hyphenate India and Pakistan, but what do we make of this tilt? Ambassador Sinha.
Is that so? Yeah,
Yes.
Barkha, I think you saw the statement and you correctly said it was rather jumbled. But as far as wars with Pakistan is concerned, I'm sure the Prime Minister, and in which he refers to ending terrorism, Prime Minister would have told President Trump, you ensure that the faucet of terrorism is turned off by Pakistan, and then there will be no war. So, I mean, obviously the new normal that we laid out after Op Sindoor was that we would not tolerate attacks across the border, cross-border terrorism from Pakistan. So all President Trump has to do is to tell his friend, Field Marshal, that make sure that there are no terrorist attacks on India for soil, and that solves the problem. But I don't think it's as simple as that. I think President Trump really wants to claim credit for stopping all wars, including wars where, he had no role to play, really. So I think that's a different aspect completely. As far as the India-Pakistan hyphenation is concerned, we've lived with it for very long, during the Cold War and even after. And I still feel that, if he has his personal preferences for Mr. Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Munir, that's his choice. But as far as India is concerned, he still goes around talking about what a great country it is and is a great friend, Prime Minister Modi. So I think we need to sort of weigh what he is saying at any particular point of time. I wouldn't be too alarmed. Yes, if offensive weaponry is being supplied by the US like they've done in the past, that would certainly be a matter of concern to us. We will have to wait and see. But as regards war, it's very clear. Stop terror, there won't be any war.
So, Dr. Pant, if Trump, puts himself in the middle of that equation, then, he gets to talk about it in a loose-tongued way later, right? So when Ambassador Sinha says that, all Trump has to do is to tell his great friend, the Field Marshal, to do this, the problem is, let's say he does that. Let's say he say, in a private conversation, he say, the Indians say, if you were only to turn off the terror tap, things would be so much better. Perfectly reasonable, perfectly natural, not the same as mediation. The problem will become, Trump will come out and say, I just met Asim Munir and I told them the Indians are very concerned, ABC, and then all hell breaks loose at home and the cycle restarts. So how do you see this Pakistan thing? And I should add, Taliban, India's reset with Taliban, what sort of messaging is that sending? Trump's fight for the background base. I know, Dr. Karta, you had a chance to meet with the Taliban Foreign Minister Mutaki when he was here. So I'll start with you, Professor Pant. Pakistan and India's reset with Taliban.
See, I think it seems to me that there is an element of narrative framing that is happening on both sides. And as you rightly pointed out, Prime Minister's statement was very categorical that this is, that terrorism, ultimately India and the US are united against terrorism. So we are framing it given our requirements. And Trump is framing it partly, I think he has, he has started liking the Pakistani leadership because he thinks they out there promoting him for Nobel Prize. They've been out there, giving him crypto deals, or rare earth deals and others. So I think there is nothing that the Pakistanis have not offered him, including a base. And I think he feels that they are, in his worldview, that's the kind of respect he expects everyone to deliver, which very few deliver. And so naturally there's an element of that. I like these people. I think that's very personal and unique to Trump. And I would agree that I think there is no point in being alarmist about these things, because look, we were very weak, we were very vulnerable during the Cold War. Chinese, Americans, and Pakistanis were on the same side, and yet we survived. We did very well, and we came out of that. I think we will manage today. We are more confident. We are more, we are an. So I think that the pressures are not going to go away, but I think our ability to withstand those pressures is far higher. The challenge happens when you have a crisis, when, as you point out, when there is an element of one-upmanship, because again, it sort of rolls the dice against the domestic sentiment here in the country. And as we had witnessed at the end of Operation Sindoor, how debilitating it became for the Prime Minister and for the party in power. I think those are the challenges that the politics in India and its ability to support and not support what Mr. Trump is doing will create incentive structures for all kinds of actors to come in and weigh in. And I think that's the challenge for everyone in India, at least for policymakers. But I think India is doing its bit, and Tara can talk about Afghanistan. But I think India's ability to engage with Afghanistan, India's sort of moving ahead with Afghanistan, is also a message in its own way to the US that look, India sided with the Taliban government when they said that look, we don't want American base there in Bagram, and India publicly in favor of the government of Afghanistan. So I think in its own way, both sides are messaging, both sides are crafting their narratives, and I think India is being relatively smart in not raising the Pakistani issue to the center stage of Indo-US engagement, because it doesn't serve any purpose except hyphenating India once again in the eyes of many Americans and perhaps the world.
Yeah, I think that last point is a great point. But Tara, if I may bring you in to talk about the Taliban, another fiercely argued issue at home. There are those, of course, who believe, and I'm talking about the opposition, political parties right now. There are parties who say he should not have been engaged with, the government should not be engaged with. There are those who say engage, but don't roll out the red carpet in the manner that you do. And there are those who believe that the visit basically cocked a snook at Pakistan. The border sort of battle that took place between Pakistan and Afghanistan coincided with the visit of Mutaki to India. You actually managed to maybe meet him, for a few moments amidst a raging controversy over that first press conference where women journalists were not called, the backlash that led women journalists to being also invited to the second one. The reset with Taliban, again, not without risks. It's a risky move, but it's maybe a much needed move, because otherwise India was sitting out any play in Afghanistan.
Absolutely, yes. Because I'll just repeat what I said to a bunch of Afghans, that most of them women, that listen, unless I engage, there's nothing I can do about it. I would so much love to help. I mean, we actually would like to help them, the Afghan women, especially the children, come back to school. And for that, I have to engage with them. So you work with what you have. Sitting out is not an option. And I've argued this for years, much before when I was still in office. I was saying, look, we have to deal with these guys. But I just want to take something which Professor Pant and you said, which is very part of this whole narrative, is that, see, the more the opposition talks it up, and then Trump picks it up, and then, he talks in public, like you said, he said, I told India and Pakistan, blah, blah, blah. Your ability to maneuver gets progressively reduced. Even if I want to, I want to talk to Pakistan, I can't, because the opposition will say, the US told you to do it. So here in the Taliban thing also, there's one aspect which just puzzles me a lot. Pakistan, as head of the sanctions committee, did not put a hamper in the way of Mutaki coming. They could have prevented him coming at all, but they didn't. So I am, as a security analyst, highly suspicious as to what is going on, because on that day they went and attacked Afghanistan. So it's a very
maybe that was that was a more effective messaging from their point of view.
Exactly. Perhaps
Because
it was.
in the end, the two sides met in Doha. Qatar mediated some sort of, agreement between them, right? I don't know, Ambassador Sinha, you have any thoughts on why Pakistan didn't stop Mutaki from coming to India?
Well, I don't think Pakistan would have that veto, really. I mean, the committee, as far as the UN committee is concerned, initially there were some doubts that whether he would get a clearance from the committee, but ultimately Pakistan allowed that to happen. It could have created a roadblock there, but it didn't. And I think what happened subsequently is perhaps more important, because now Khwaja Asif, the defense minister, says that India is encouraging Afghanistan to attack Pakistan or the TTP in Afghanistan to do so. So I think there is a game being played here. I'm reminded when I was in London and Dr. Pant, and I don't think he was there at that time, I was invited to source to speak on a book called My Enemy's Enemy, India and Afghanistan from the Soviet invasion to the withdrawal, by Avinash Paliwal. A very interesting discussion, because we had Afghans, we had Baluchis, we had Pakistanis, and I was perhaps one of the few Indians. So that is the real thing. My enemy's enemy, and to complete that sentence, is my friend. And I think we really need to engage whoever, and I agree with Dr. Karta, that whoever is in power in Pakistan, Taliban 1.0, we had problems. We had major problems, and it led to Kandahar hijacking. But Taliban 2.0 is different. And look at the statements. Even their defense minister has given a statement to Al Jazeera, or an interview to Al Jazeera, said that we want good relations.
Yeah.
And,
sorry, you're bunching. Yeah.
As far as, and engage them as best as we can, without any sort of holding back in terms of any moral trepidation, or because it's our strategic interest, it's real politics that demands that we engage whoever is in power in
Absolutely. Dr. Karta, did you want to make that complete your point on Afghanistan? And then I'll take final comments from all of you. We haven't spoken about Ashley Tellis. It's the other interesting development that's taken place. So maybe last comments looking at that. But on Afghanistan, if you want to just add a thought.
Yeah, in Afghanistan, there's a bunch of things you should be doing. Like, for example, in terms of, they've done a tremendous job in narcotics, eliminating narcotics cultivation. It's not the best of motives, but nonetheless, it is done deal, right? You can step in there with assistance of, alternative food cultivation and narcotics intelligence. This is a huge thing for us. It is huge. You're not seeing it in the public sphere, but the whole narcotics angle is extremely dangerous. And it's all going through Pakistan. Afghanistan, my problem is that the defense minister has just said that the ceasefire may hold, it may not hold. It depends if Taliban cannot reign in the TTP indefinitely. It can't be done. And this is something a UN sanctions committee report has said, that they have some influence on the TTP, but it's not a lot. Now, if that starts again, then what happens next? So we have offered defense training, but that's about as far as we will go. I don't think we should not go beyond that.
Yeah. So we don't know how that's going to play. I mean, that, Pakistan may well choose that sort of aggression at the border to contain Taliban's engagement with India. And India can't, at least, as you said, overly get involved on that front. I want to, a lot of imponderables there. I want to end with a couple of questions. Dr. Pant, I want to start with you on Ashley Tellis. I bring this up because Ashley Tellis is a major figure in the Indo-US relationship. He was one of the key negotiators on the Indo-US nuclear deal. And his recent columns have been attracting a lot of attention in India, because he had written that India had great power delusions, and he was effectively arguing that India needed to pick a side, and this sort of multipolarity, as he called it, didn't work in a bipolar world. Then he goes and he gets arrested, and he's basically accused of taking 1,000 pages of top classified document home, and also meeting the Chinese for dinner. And you've written on this. Let's start with you. Dr. Pant.
On Ashley, I think we all know him personally, so it's also very difficult to remove yourself,
Yes.
and the person that he is. I think the challenge that I see in increasingly we are living in a world where, and the reason I wrote that column was to highlight this fact that it is now becoming very reminiscent of the Cold War spying stories that we used to hear. There's this element of very interesting personalities getting embroiled in these kind of episodes. And an academic of Ashley's stature, and similarly, there is I linked it up to what is happening in the UK, another spy incident happening there. I mean, I'm not claiming that Ashley's is a similar case, but I mean, of course, he has been detained for illegal retention of information. But there is another episode happening in the UK where a researcher has been taken in, and the British intelligence are openly saying that the kind of threat they are facing from China has exponentially increased because of the way they operate. Now, there are two different issues here. One, of course, what has happened to Ashley and what it means for him personally, and what will happen there. But I think the larger issue to me is that as we find US and China competing, contesting more into this geopolitical space, I think we are going to see more of these episodes emerge. Both sides would venture into it, and all sides would venture into it. And so it won't, I mean, we won't know the real story long after everyone is gone, perhaps 30, 40 years down the line, when our people are going through the archives, writing some books on what happened. But what I think in some ways is interesting in this particular case, that John Bolton's case, you can tag on to Mr. Trump and his dislike for John Bolton, but Ashley was being surveilled under Biden administration.
That's
Since
right.
2022, he was under surveillance. So clearly, there was something that there were suspicions about something which predated Trump administration, and then there seems to be bipartisan aspect to this controversy as well. So sad as it is, but my view is that I think this is just a starting point, and my worry often is that are we prepared in India for what for these kind of episodes to happen, and how influential at times some of the other agencies are increasingly going to become, especially with the kind of technologies that are available for intelligence. Intelligence at this point.
Exactly. That's what your recent column basically pointed to. Dr. Karta, any thoughts that the Ashley Tellis case triggers? I mean, Dr. Pant has argued in his NDTV column that, look, I mean, India needs to wake up, because like China's influence could have deep tentacles here without us even, who would have ever thought it? Again, all of us know Ashley or have known Ashley in a professional capacity. So it's really tough to offer judgment, offer comment. We know so little, but just the broader thoughts.
See, on the Tellis case itself, what the document says is that he printed out pages with the co-worker watching, and he knows the cameras are on, and he knows all of that, and he still prints it out. In all, I've seen this. Okay, I'm not saying I've seen it. I mean, I would assume in many cases, there is, over the years, there's a degree of carelessness. You're so used to dealing with classified stuff, not among Intel people. Intel people will never think of actually printing out a top secret document, but officials sometimes may, because you're dealing with that, right? In that thing, there is nothing to say that he actually handed over anything to the Chinese. So we will leave that as a question.
Yeah.
When it happened here, it can easily happen here. Not just because of the sheer pressure of work. The pressure of work is so intense in various places, but also the fact that I did a paper recently on the Chinese presence around you, not the projects, etc. There are hundreds and thousands of Chinese present in small jobs all around their periphery. They are in things like tourism, they are there in hotels, they are running something. Now, how can you surveil all these people? There is, like, say you're a tourist in Sri Lanka, there's a bunch of Chinese there running hotels. So the presence is immense. Will they use it? Yes, they will. So there is a continuing, very clear and present danger.
Ambassador Sinha, thoughts? The Ashley Tellis case. I mean, I agree. There's nothing, though there have been insinuations about dinners with Chinese officials, Manila envelopes. I mean, this sounds like a Netflix series. It's one of those things where God knows what the truth is, but if this is the truth, it's certainly a whole lot stranger than fiction. Your thoughts, sir?
I quite agree with Professor Pant and Dr. Karta. We have to be very careful as far as the Chinese are concerned. As far as Ashley is concerned, of course, the investigations, and if it goes to trial, reveal further details. But the question that I asked myself was, has his perception of India changed because of hobnobbing with the Chinese? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I hope the answer is no. But the fact is that the Chinese, that as Professor said, this interesting case which the Labour government is facing in the UK, they're trying to hush up things, or trying to sort of state, to sort of give not a clean sheet, but the affidavits filed, etc., by their intelligence officials clearly brings out, and I think it's just the scratching on the surface, the extensive Chinese spying network, not just in the UK, but all over. And as Tara said, even in our neighborhood, I'm aware of what we're up to in Sri Lanka when I was there. So I think we need to be very careful on this score. And I do hope that, as far as Ashley's case is concerned, it is a false flag. But having said that, we really can't judge sitting here not knowing the full facts of the case.
All right, we leave it there. The big question now is whether the Prime Minister will meet with Donald Trump on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. That's only a few days away. My personal sense, I don't know, all of you could correct me, is that Indian diplomats will not want that exposure till there's something to announce, something that the two countries can agree on. You don't want any more embarrassments, and Trump comes with his own volatility, but who knows? Let's see. A certain degree of friendliness is back in the discourse. I think that is what was pointed out by all of you, and that point is well taken. We leave it there. Many, many questions awaiting answers, perhaps in the next few days. Dr. Karta, Ambassador Sinha, Professor Pant, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Take care.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Voter Story and support independent, robust journalism.